Good morning, evening, afternoon, whatever time of day it is when you're watching this and where you're watching this. And thank you for watching this back on the replay. Those of you that are watching on the replay, please do let me know, where are you and when is it? I'd love to know where and when you're listening from. And shout out to all of those who are joining live right now. Let me know who's out there in the comments. Good morning, Amanda. Lovely to see you tuning in. Okay, so today we are talking about serial position effect. Oh, I've gone a bit blurry. There we go. Today we are talking about serial position effect. Morning, Katie. Morning, Tristan. Great to see people rolling in. So serial position effect, it's got nothing to do with where you put your breakfast cereal in the morning. Not that kind of cereal. And instead, it's got all about how to think, how you remember stuff. Hey, Facebook user watching live. I think I know who you are, but it just says Facebook user. So let's start off. I'm going to give you a list, and we'll come back to this in a little while. So the list is a simple shopping list: milk, bread, beans, carrots, salt, tomatoes, flour, and eggs. Okay, not going to repeat it. Deliberately went through that at a fair pace. Let's see how you get. Try and remember it. See what you can remember from it. Good morning. You are indeed Facebook user today. Still in bed, watching from bed. I hope you're comfy, Facebook user. Okay, so serial position effect is a memory bias. It's all to do with how we remember stuff and things. But more than that, it actually informs a lot of the choices and decisions we make in the background without us necessarily realizing that it's happening. Ah, hello, John. So I gave you a list and I said I wasn't going to repeat it, but I'm going to repeat it because we've got twice the number of people watching live as there were when I first read the list. So for those who were here at the very start when I first read the list, let me know in the comments what items you remember from that list that I gave you. And I'll give the list again now for those that have just tuned in. So the list was milk, bread, beans, carrots, salt, tomato, flour, and eggs. So for those of you who have joined in after I first read that list, let me know in the comments which words you remember from that now. And obviously looking at other people's comments is cheating. Well done, Amanda. You remembered all of them. Good work. Looking to see if anyone else comments in with the stuff that they remember. Beans and bread. We know what's on Kerry's mind, obviously. Nothing like a good bit of beans on toast, eh? Cool. So beans and bread both came fairly high up that list. Now, when it comes to remembering a list, and of course, that's a very short list that I repeated and asked you to remember it in a very short period of time. If we get to the end and I ask you again, obviously we've been talking about it a lot, so you're more likely to remember some, but the memory's not going to be as good. Katie, that's pretty much her weekly shopping list. Brilliant. Milk, beans, carrot, tomatoes, salt, eggs. Yeah. Yep. Carrots. Oh, interesting that you're remembering the carrots, Tristan, but haven't said anything else. That's a curious one. Is that because you didn't remember the others and carrots stood out to you? Ah, so if I'd said that you needed to remember them, it would have been different, but you forgot carrots, beans, and salt. Yep, so beans, carrots, and salt were all directly in the middle. So you are the perfect example. You get a gold star for being my perfect example here. What tends to happen when you've got a list of items to remember is that you end up with primacy and recency. So serial position effect is to do with where you position things and how that informs your memory on them. So with a list like that, and using my prime example here from the comments, actually, let me show you what I'm talking about. Here we go. I'd forgotten carrots, beans, and salt. And yes, if I had said that you needed to remember them all, then it would have potentially created different results. But yeah, so it was milk, bread, and beans. You remembered beans. Then it was salt, carrots and salt, so you remembered them. Then it was tomato, flour, and eggs. So you remembered everything either side, but completely forgot the section in the middle. And that is exactly what the textbooks would expect. So the first thing you hear, you're far more likely to remember, and in fact that's the most powerful part. So this, it's called primacy. It's the first thing kind of primes your thinking and your memory, and then recency. So yeah, the first thing, the prime thing, and then the most recent thing, the last thing, are the things that you're going to remember most, and the stuff in the middle will naturally be hardest to remember. So when you're making yourself a shopping list and you want to try and remember it so you don't have to refer back to the list, a simple way around this is to write it out once and then write it out again in a different order. Actually, there's much better ways if it's specifically a shopping list, because you can map the journey through the store in your mind and remember it that way, and all sorts of other things. Of course, you don't want to be textbook. Who does? So that's a really clear and simple and obvious example of how it works. But it informs us and our memories in many different ways as well. So I've spoken previously, I think I covered it in a previous video. If not, I'll be covering it in a video coming up soon, about yes, no, I have. I mentioned it in anchoring or focalism. So if you have a piece of information, you're likely to then base your future decisions on that first bit of information, even if you become informed differently afterwards. So, for example, yes, absolutely, you could take the shopping list with you, or you could write it out the way you go around the shop. So, for example, if you see a car for sale at this price, and previously the adverts you've been looking at are saying that it's more expensive than that, then you're likely to go, oh, that's a very good price, because the first bit of information you saw was a higher price. If the first garage you go, first shop you go into to buy a new TV has it listed at 500, you think, okay, that's the price of the TV. And then the next time you see a TV, even if it's, whether it's a similar TV or a different TV, that becomes your base point to then go, this TV is going to be, or when you see one that's 600, you go, oh, that's a bit more expensive than I thought. When you see one that's 400, you go, oh, that's a bit cheaper. So it plays a bigger part than just remembering a list of items. Here's another example, particularly of where that focalism comes in and where serial positioning effect can make a big difference. And this is something, if you, I say I've got a lot of business owners watching right now. So, so this is something that's well worth considering when you're thinking about writing copy, when you're thinking about delivering talks, or even just speaking about your business in general, how you lay out your website, all sorts of things can be informed by this. So bear this in mind when it comes to promoting what you do. So, okay, let's imagine now that you're single and you're on the dating scene, and I've met a couple of people who might be interested, who might want to take you out on a date, and I'm going to set you up. And I say, right, there's two people you can choose from. They've got good and bad qualities, but they're both lovely people overall. Would you rather date person A or person B? Person A, yes, please. Okay, so this one's for John. Person A, most commonly described as reliable, supportive, caring, lazy, jealous, and moody. Partner number 2, moody, jealous, lazy, caring, supportive, and reliable. So, okay, you can't have both of them. You need to choose one, and I can't give you their names because they're made up. Actually, they're both called Fred, just by chance. So, was there one of those two that you felt particularly that you were leaning toward over the other? Now, the chances are Most of you are probably astute enough to have noticed that I described exactly the same traits, but just in a different order. Yes, they are indeed both the same. You can keep them. Yeah, so I chose rather extreme examples, and it was probably fairly obvious what I did there, but without having the two directly next to each other and quite so obvious. If I describe someone as reliable, supportive, and caring, they can be a bit lazy, a bit jealous, and sometimes a bit moody. That sounds a lot more attractive, and you're more likely to remember when you go away from it that they're reliable, supportive, and caring. And hey, everyone has their downsides, right? Whereas if I say, yeah, this person's moody, jealous, and lazy, but they are really caring, supportive, and reliable, then you're more likely, when you think back to it and remember it, to be thinking about the fact that they're moody, jealous, and lazy. So why would you want to pursue that? Now, obviously, that was a ridiculous hypothetical example, but studies were done into this using, rather than just reading two lists together, reading them separately apart to different people and analyzing the trends. Yes, there we go. Tended to like, thank you, John. I tended to like the one where the positive traits were listed first. And that is exactly what you would expect to find. And that's what studies have found, numerous studies performed in various different ways. So this is why I say, if you're a business owner, this is really relevant. You want to talk about the biggest thing, the biggest seller, the biggest hook, the thing that you're most proud of, or that your customers are going to most resonate with. You want to shout about that first, and you want to remind them about it at the end. The stuff in the middle is still really useful, but the first thing that people hear is going to stand out in their minds a lot more, and the very last thing that people hear will also stand out in their mind. But primacy is stronger than recency, and because of serial positioning, you can kind of, there's less focus and strength given to the stuff in the middle. So how does this help you if you're looking to make a decision? Well, go back and watch my video on focalism or anchoring, which is also in this series. Easiest way to find that is if you head to my YouTube channel. There's a whole playlist on there that has all of the videos, or you can find it on my Facebook page. I'm glad you found it useful. You're very welcome. So definitely go back and watch that, as that's got more information and more tips specifically on how the primacy effect can influence things. But the other thing is, as with all of these cognitive biases, being aware of it and looking for it will help you to control for it. It will help you to think more clearly about the decisions that you're making and resist the temptation to be too heavily influenced by these biases. Equally, we all have a tendency to believe that we're less influenced by bias than other people, and the more we learn about it, the more we believe that, which is fascinating, but not actually true. So yeah, do be aware of that and watch out. So that's serial positioning effect. Tune in this time next week, and I'll be covering another cognitive bias. Debaters last night, or could have or should have used that trick. Yeah, it's debating and public speaking definitely relies on this. This is one of the reasons why when you structure an essay, a lot of the time, or when you're the absolute fundamental basics of giving a talk, one of the most common approaches, and it's a bit old school now, to be honest, but it still kind of has a point, but it's especially true still in essay writing, is tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them it, and then tell them what you've told them. And the reason for that structure is absolutely down to this. People want to know what it's all about before they start, and they're going to remember that. They'll be interested during the middle part, but that's not going to stick with them. So you summarize at the end and tell them it all over again in a summary, and they'll go away remembering the very beginning, which is why it's powerful to have something that hooks. Another reason why it's powerful to have something that hooks people in and gets people on a journey with you or telling a story with you. And then at the end, recapping and going over the key takeaways, then they're far more likely to have an overall positive and beneficial experience and memory of that scenario, because they'll remember the very first thing and how you started and the value from that, and they'll remember the very last thing where you summarize it all and hold it together, which helps them to remember the stuff in the middle. Yeah, essay writing, report writing, absolutely. And blogging, yeah, very true. Very true. Cool. I hope that's been useful for everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. You guys are all very, very welcome, and I'm glad you enjoyed it. And I will see you same time, Thursday, 9 o'clock next week.